Katie here from Equestrian Movement, and we are doing another Training Thursday. Hopefully my speakers are working. If you're watching, let me know. Hopefully you're not just listening to me. Well, you wouldn't be listening to me, just watching me talk away. So maybe I'll just hold the speaker up. I've got the wrong, I can't find my headphones. Hi, can you let me know if you can hear me? I can't actually see who's watching, but if you're watching, can you let me know if you can hear what I'm saying before I go into this too much? How has your week been? Excellent. Thank you. How's your week been? Haven't seen you guys for like a couple of weeks now. It's been probably 2 weeks or so since we did the Stronger Bond workshop. It's been pretty busy for me in my life. I've really enjoyed welcoming our new members as well. So tonight, hi Anita, how are you? Thanks for watching. So tonight we're going to be talking about our position in the saddle and how it can affect the way that our horses move. So we've had 2 questions, so I'm going to just work on those 2 questions tonight. And then if people have more questions, then we can do another one, because we can really go down the rabbit hole with posture in the saddle. So the first question was from, I think it was Abby that said it, that when she tries to hold her posture, I guess, or sit up straight and it creates some tension, she can feel that her horse Grand really tightens up against her. And this is really common and it's really normal that, as soon as we tighten in our body, then our horses are going to tighten against us as well, because we're not going with the flow of the movement anymore, we're going against them. So it's such an art and a skill, and we honestly never perfect it with regards to getting that really beautiful centered independent seat, but it's something that we always are working on and working towards. One of the reasons why it's so hard to achieve is because our biomechanically we're not designed to fit a horse between our legs. So the angles that are required from us in our body isn't natural, and it stresses our body, and it depends also like the size of the horse that you're riding as well. So obviously if you've got a horse that's got a very wide barrel, then you have to have very, very open and supple hips to fit them in there. Hi Cindy, how are you? Thanks for watching. And then if you've got a horse that's a bit smaller, trying to actually get your legs around and into cuddle the horse is difficult as well. So there's definitely a struggle when it comes to having a nice centered, balanced, independent seat on all horses. And the hard part about it also is that your position doesn't get better unless you ride, basically. There isn't a lot of transferable skills that we can do on the ground that translates well into saddle. We do have our 3 weeks to improve your riding course, which comes with the workout plan to improve your core, and that definitely helps. And things like skipping, squats, just general areas of focus to improve that muscle tone in different areas, it does help, but there's nothing like riding horses that gets you fit for riding horses, to be honest. It wasn't until I was riding 6 horses a day that I started to feel really strong and competent with my body in the saddle. So that probably doesn't help you guys very much, because I don't think many people are riding 6 horses a day. But there's definitely things that we can do, and things that I do with my students, who are only riding once a week, to make you more stable and more secure in the saddle. So one of the things that you want to think about when you're riding is that you're trying to create like a dance with your horse. So if you're thinking about your dance partner and they're like so focused on their posture, they're very upright and rigid, trying to have a beautiful posture, then we really lose the flow of the dance, and you'll lose that harmony and the integration of movement with your horse. So what you want to think about as a horse rider is you're going to think that you're actually a dancer and that your horse is your dance partner, and that harmony that we're trying to achieve is like your body and your horse's body uniting in movement. And so it then becomes important that you are very good at controlling your center of gravity and your balance in the saddle. Initially, we're very dependent on our horses for our balance and our center of gravity, which is why we start riders on the lunge to focus on that before they start balancing on, otherwise you start balancing on the horse's mouth. So you want to have that center of gravity really well established, and you want to be able to use it independently of your horse's movement. So riding lots of different horses can benefit that as well, because the gaits change, like riding different bouncier horses, smoother horses, like, the smoother the horse, the less they're going to actually bounce you up to get into a rising trot. But the canter obviously is smoother, and so you have to work a lot harder to actually, build those muscles for the squatting of the rising and the sitting. But then also, like your bouncy horses, you have to really center your gravity on them so that they're not throwing you over the front of the saddle. So, you can help kind of really isolate where your center of gravity is by riding different horses. But that obviously is not an option for everybody either. So just any of like your core exercises, maybe yoga or Pilates. I know, hi Melanie, how are you? I know Sarah's had a lot of success with doing her Pilates that she had to do through her physio for her back. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find our independent center of gravity and balance and unite it with our horse's center of gravity and balance. The greener the horse is, the less able they are to unite in their movement with us as well. So that's why green on green equals black and blue. Not to mention the fact that we have poor communication and whatnot, but horses don't like us losing our balance and smacking them on the back when we do, or smacking them in the mouth when we do. They tend to get spooky and upset and sore backs and grumpy at us. So it does help to actually learn how to be strong and centered in your body on a school horse. So what Abby was talking about was, trying to hold good posture, and that tightness of holding good posture translating through to grand. And so this is where I teach, not so much trying to hold your posture, but riding a positional correction. So what you want to do is stack your body so that you place everything into good posture, and then relax, and then stack everything, and then relax, and then stack everything, and then relax. So we have two problems. First problem is that your horse is used to you riding it the way that you ride it. And so if you start changing the way that you ride, your horse won't be as responsive and effective off your aids. The second problem is that you're used to riding the way that you ride as well. And so when we start to change things positionally and try and affect your posture, you actually become less effective in the way that you use your aids as well. So whenever I'm trying to tidy somebody's position up, I always just give them like their stacking blocks to come back to, and then let them just ride. And sometimes you will need to like just go back to your habits to try and get your horse back to be connected and working with you again. And then once you've got them kind of like set on their line, then you can come back to you. You kind of can alternate between the two, where you do your positional correction and then you reconnect with the horse, positional correction, reconnect with the horse. So the thing is that every time that you manage to ride that positional correction, you're activating those muscles. So you're building them. So it means that maybe like today, this week, the next month, there may not be a huge improvement. But over time, each time you start like restacking yourself, you're going to be building those muscles to be riding in that nice stacked position. And so then when you are doing that kind of reset in your body, you're not, you're not actually changing a whole lot. You're just kind of repositioning yourself slightly. Initially, it is quite a big reposition, but over time it gets smaller. And so when I start my beginners off, that's why I keep their periods of time in trot and canter very short, is so I can say, this is your perfect position. Now focus on that, because the longer you stay in the trot and the canter, the more your body is kind of going to slip back to where it's comfortable. And we kind of have to fight where we're comfortable to find where we're centered and balanced. And so resetting, like physically coming back to the walk, back to the halt, repositioning ourselves, and then going forward back into the trot, so that we're building the muscles that are actually helpful, rather than, so you start to get tired, maybe your legs start to come forward, maybe your shoulders start to come forward, maybe I'm really big at rounding my shoulders, your own, and they are your postural faults, start to creep into your riding. And if you just push through, then you're just going to be conditioning and strengthening the muscles that aren't helpful to you in your riding. So when I'm working with my beginners, then it's like, this is the position that I want you in, now go do it, now stop, put yourself back in that position, now go do it, now stop, put yourself back in that position, now go do it, now stop. So it means that, my beginners don't get into a group as quickly as other riding schools, but it means that when they are ready to go and ride with other horses, they are actually in control of their body and not building bad habits, but building good habits. And so that's ideally what we're trying to achieve there. So you can do the same thing with wherever you're at as it is. That is what we cover off in our 3 weeks to improve your riding. But I'll give you like a quick rundown of the basics of what I find most effective. So lift your toes rather than push your heels down. If you've been taught to push your heels down, then it actually destabilizes the calf action, because it's, you're stretching your calf instead of engaging it. So if you lift your toes, you're actually engaging your calves, and so you can actually get your leg onto the horse's belly. I have a pet peeve about the toes in scenario. If you actually look at your feet are not perfectly parallel themselves. So if you have instructors telling you to turn your toes so that they're parallel, your feet will actually be turned in, because your feet are actually triangles. And so yes, we do want to tidy up and look neat and tidy in the way that we're riding, but we also want to be effective in our seat and our leg aid. And we want to be, so we'll go back up the body and then come back down to the toes. So to get your seat right, you want to think about your pelvis like my pelvis is really wonky. I don't know how to get straight in the camera there. You want to think about your pelvis like a bucket, and we want to have that bucket of water so that it's not spilling. Now, if your bucket tips forward, it's going to spill the water out the front. If your bucket tips back, it's going to spill the water out the back. So we're trying to keep our pelvis like a bucket full of water that's not moving. Now, if you turn your toes in, it pulls your knees and your thighs on, and so it actually rotates your pelvis forward. And so that's going to tip the water out the front. And so as soon as you rotate your pelvis, you're no longer using your seat properly, and you can't communicate with your seat muscles. and then it's going to tip your upper body forward, and as soon as we're slightly in front of the vertical, it also puts our horse on the forehand. So I call this the ejector seat because when we have our thighs on and our pelvis tipped forward, we are always going to get spat out of the saddle. So if our horse stops quickly, we're going over front. If our horse turns quickly, we're going in the opposite direction. We want to have our back of our leg and seat muscles is where we ride from, engaged and around the horse so that our calves have full contact. And then we're like cupping or cuddling or hugging the horse with our butt and the backs of our thighs and kind of the back part of the calf. It's hard without a video. So Cindy has been taught heels down. Yeah, me too. And I also got taught toes in, and we're not actually structurally supposed to do that with our body, and so now I have super weak ankles that just give out on me at any stage and I just fall over. So that's another reason why heels down, toes in is a pet peeve of mine, is because it's ruined my ankles. So I like to teach, so if you think of your foot, I like to teach trying to just lift the little toe, and that works for most people to just kind of like lengthen the calf but keep it engaged and on the horse without like over flexing the actual ankle joint itself. Different for a show jumping seat. When you're jumping, you want to be focusing on showing the fence, the soles of your feet, because that's going to anchor your leg into the horse as it's jumping. This is for flat work that we're talking mostly about. So I work on little toe up slightly, and then that tends to engage the leg onto the belly appropriately for you to cuddle and hug, so that you're no longer trying to clamp with your knee and your thigh, because your knee and your thigh puts you in an ejector position. So another one that I like to use, and because it also gives people a giggle, is you want to squeeze your butt like you're trying to suck a poo in. So everybody that's sitting here watching with me now, have a go. Just like, well, you watch me do it. Squeeze your butt like you're trying to suck a poo in. And that's like your seat muscles engaged. And that's what you use to lift yourself out of the saddle. So you don't want to stand on the stirrups to get out of the saddle, because then that creates a pendulum action with your lower leg. You want to like lift yourself out of the saddle. So you've got your lower leg on and around the horse's belly. You've got your bucket. There is going to be some rotation to get out of the saddle. It's impossible to do it perfectly in the rising trot, but we're going to give it our best crack. And then we're going to squeeze our butt like we're trying to suck a poo in to get ourselves out of the saddle. Another thing that you can do to get this to work for you is you can put your back and your heels against a wall, and you can practice going down the wall as far as you can, and then using your butt muscles to stand yourself back up the wall, and then that also gets you engaging those seat muscles. It's really hard actually. I've done that a few times and got stuck halfway down the wall and had to sit down. So what it also does is it keeps the pelvis open. So as soon as our bucket tips slightly, it closes our pelvis, and then our upper body tips forward. So it's actually really hard to do the rising trot and keep that upright posture. It's really hard not to go slightly forward because our pelvis naturally tilts that way. So my cue for my students is squeeze your butt like you're trying to suck a poo in and go hips to their ears. And so that tends to get like the butt muscle engaged and the pelvis open as you rise, and that's your best chance at keeping the shoulders back as you stand up. So obviously the easiest thing to do to get the rising trot is to use your shoulders to swing forward, and then that's what creates that pendulum action. That momentum to get you out of the saddle. So keeping the openness of the pelvis and the seat engaged to get you out of the saddle gets the best action for keeping that upright seat. So as I said, as soon as you get slightly in front of that upright seat, you're going to be putting your horse on the forehand. Depending on where you're at with your riding and how your horse is going and whatnot, it may not even be that big of a problem for you or your horse. But if you are really struggling with your horse being on the forehand, not half halting properly and whatnot, just that slight shoulder adjustment can make a significant improvement. So my second last little trick is you go thumbs up and then thumbs out. You can't see it because the camera is too close. Thumbs out, and as you pull your thumbs out, do it with me. As you pull your thumbs out, draw your shoulder blades together so that it opens your chest. And then this is where we tend to get the most tight. You'll feel your lower back hollow as you do it, and that will rotate your pelvis forward. So we pull our shoulder blades together and then we shimmy, and then that should let that go again. So you're trying to stack, you've got your feet in the right place, lower leg is cuddled around the horse, butt is engaged, shoulder blades are pulled together so that it opens the chest. And then we're gonna, this is my last trick, is we're gonna just use your finger to push your chin back so that it lengthens your neck. And then you're going to shimmy, and then that should just relax everything for you. And so we're learning how to engage and center all of those muscles, but then do it with relaxation. So we're creating tone. And so that's my overall positional correction to stack your body. And then you'll go, okay, and now my horse needs to do this, my horse needs to do that, and my horse needs to do this. And then you'll be like, oh, I'm not in the right position anymore. So we stack, focus on our horse, stack, focus on our horse. And over time, if you can pick on yourself enough, you will get into a pretty decent, independent, upright, self-carriage seat. And so this isn't even talking about how to use your seat other than how to get those butt muscles engaged. We go into that. I have a few exercises on the fit ball that I like to use to get the pelvis working. You get to the point where you'll be sitting on a couch and your butt muscle will be talking to the couch. Or you put the indicator on in the car and you've got your right hip bone lifting to turn the car to the right. Yeah, it's quite fun. But, our horses are sensitive and tuned in to this. And so when we get to the high levels of working, or the more tuned in working with our horses, there's actually the tightening and releasing of those seat muscles that has most of the conversation. And it's just your leg and your hand that are keeping the horse kind of together and underneath you. So then, I hope that answered the question. So put yourself in the right position and then wiggle it out. And then put yourself back in that position and then wiggle it out is my best advice. For not just being super tight when you're trying to hold that position that you want. So the other question was from Carolyn about the different disciplines and how it affects the horse. And so we did talk a little bit about that when I was talking about getting our seat right there. So definitely being in your jump seat, in your 2-point seat, is going to put your horse on the forehand, but it has the added benefit of opening the horse's back out and really getting them up and reaching through the shoulders that they won't get in the dressage seat. Your dressage seat can hollow your horse if you're in sit, trot and canter, if you've not got engagement yet. So if you're trying to figure out how to use your seat and you're just being jarred by your horse, then they are most likely not engaged and working over their back yet. Once your horse figures out how to have some engagement and start working through their back a little bit, they actually start absorbing the concussion of the movement themselves. And so the sit trot isn't as jarring and the canter isn't as jarring, but you do have to figure out how to do those circles that I was talking about with your seat that we practice on the fit ball, for you to actually follow the movement properly. So you can be working on that and still not have the horse working with a nice action over the back. Getting up into the 2-point seat allows that, and so that's why you really don't want to be in your 3-point seat even for poles, is that you want to be in at least a forward 3-point seat or a 2-point seat, so you can really get some of that scope and that bascule through the horse's back to get appropriately over the poles and the jump. And so then that's also like if you watch the horses at the Olympics and you see the eventers, like, you know, they're horses, they give dressage a good go, but when you compare them to the actual dressage horses, they don't have the same kind of roundedness to them, because they do need to have like really good coverage through the chest and the shoulders to be jumping those huge jumps that you do in eventing, and you know, there's a lot of clearance and height that they've got to get over them. So it is a very different set of muscles that the horse needs to develop, and the two definitely complement each other. It just depends on where you're going competitively with it. I think that unless you're at the Olympics, it probably doesn't matter very much. But you can see the horses that have never done pole work or grid work or like any small jumps that are always just in, you know, the dressage arena. You know, some of them have never even been trail ridden, so all they know is how to shorten and compact and collect their body. They can get very stuck there. So we do want to have a nice combination of the two to complement, you know, really opening up the back and freeing up the shoulders and getting the horses moving, but also teaching them how to come together. And basically what we're trying to do when we're doing dressage is the same that I was just talking about with our body, is we want to teach the horse how to stack its body appropriately for good balance and independent self-carriage, so that we can unite the two. And so that's obviously going to help you when it comes to any jumping and whatnot that you want to do. And if we get stuck too much in like the collection work, then it's not helpful for them. So it's just such a fine balancing act between the two, to get it. But definitely when you're in your 2-point seat, your horse's balance will primarily be in its chest and shoulders, and they will be a little bit strung out and on the forehand, and the energy will be getting lost through the hindquarters. So the more flat work and dressage that you use to complement that, the better the horse will be at keeping itself together for jumps and for fences. And the same thing, like it complements the dressage. You know, the more you try and keep a horse together and collected and shortened, the less scope it will have. And then you see like, you know, horses that are all leg movers, front leg movers. I can't remember what they call them now. But like the front end is all flicky and the back end doesn't match what the front end is doing, and the back is all screwed because of it. You know, complementing the two is very beneficial to the horse's body. Asking them to come together and shorten and stack their body and then lengthen it back out is very beneficial for the horse's soundness in carrying us. So it definitely does affect the way that your horse works, and it is good to try and find a way to bring the two together, even if, you know, the most exciting thing that you can kind of set yourself up to do is poles, like even just poles in themselves. One of our members, this last month in our Green to Self-Carriage membership, actually we did the canter transitions over a pole, and one of our members was asking, why is my horse so good at show jumping and just like can't do this transition over a pole? And it's actually, you know, it's really challenging to the horse because it's asking for like a nice scope and a nice pop into that canter transition. And so if our horse has any tightness through the back, or It also requires a lot of coordination for them to nail it right on the pole. So if we don't have a nice adjustable stride, if they don't have an elastic top line, if they're lacking some elevation, depends on where they're at in the training scale as well, the actual transition to canter over pole can be very challenging for a lot of horses, not just green horses. They can be super educated dressage horses and still struggle with it, and as we've seen there, they can also be super educated show jump horses and still struggle with that. So we're looking at using poles for that gymnastic challenge of opening and expanding the back. And so I think the best way that I have of understanding it is that our horse is in self-carriage and in control of its body. We're trying to stack the back and sort of shorten the back a little bit, but lengthen the neck. So the better engaged our horse's center of gravity and posture is, the longer they can carry their neck. And so when you see green horses that are working hollow, they have a really short neck because their balance is on the forehand and they're holding with their neck. And so the more we start transferring that into holding with their core and their top line, the longer their back gets, the more elastic they get, the lower their head goes. And then they will go less on the forehand if we are slightly in front of the vertical or in our 2-point seat. So that does also help our show jumpers, if that makes sense, in the big old roundabout way. So all are beneficial together because we're working towards dynamic movement, but centering our balance and then uniting the two. So hopefully that answered more questions than it created, and you have some things to play with next time you go riding. Thanks for watching. Bye.